Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Hello everybody, my name is George Carrillo. I'm subbing in today for Bruce Broussard. Today we've got a special guest. We've got the mayor candidate that's coming in to speak about the city of Tigard. I've got John Goodhouse with me here today, and we're going to be talking about some important issues. And so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it and introduce our guest. John, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, George.
And, I want to talk a little bit about letting the voters know who is John? What is the area that Tigard is covering? I know for myself, I have a Sherwood address, but yet, my ballot says, I have to decide between three different candidates. And so, even though I'm not part of Sherwood, I'm part of Tigard actually. So, why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself first?
Perfect, thank you. Once again, so my name is John Goodhouse, running for Tigard mayor. I've been on the city council for 8 years now. I've lived in Tigard my entire life. Went through the school system myself. My kids went through the school system. Been active in the community when I was a kid. Was Cub Scouts, did a lot of sports. I did basketball a little bit, but really football, wrestling, and soccer, and a little bit of track. And then my kids, they went through the school system too as well. So really been in Tigard forever, along the campaign trail or just in general. Always run into people that said, oh, I remember I babysat you when you were a kid. And the street I live on is actually the house I grew up in. About 2000, 2001, my dad had kidney cancer. I moved in to take care of him. He passed away. So a lot of the neighbors I have are still the same neighbors. So I have a really close connection with everyone in the area. Really love Tigard. And I bought a business recently, a year and a half, down in downtown Tigard. It's called Beach Hut Deli. And so it's a great business, and really has allowed me to be more involved too in the community as far as downtown Tigard, and be able to interact with the businesses, really see what's going on there, and help a lot of the businesses, really bring that perspective to the council. I've already been a representative of businesses, but by being downtown and interacting with the businesses in the community and putting on events for the community, it's allowed me really to get a little more of a connection and kind of realize to bring Tigard back to kind of how it was when I was a kid. But love Tigard and been around here for a long time.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your business. And, buying a business about a year and a half ago, we're still in the thick of the pandemic. Talk to me a little bit about why start a business during the pandemic? How has that looked like for you? And what seems to be, are there any current barriers that you're facing right now as a business owner?
So the business was already ongoing. I'd been there about 3.5 years. And so I bought it. I took over, and there were some barriers with it. The big part of it really was, it was pretty established business, and the nice thing with the business, we had a lot of DoorDash online ordering, and we were able to find ways to still stay busy, be active. Really a key component too I like with the business is being involved in the community. I'll do fundraisers for nonprofits, for the schools, for the sports programs, where we'll do an evening where I give 20% of the sales to that nonprofit. For that football team, after the home games, I feed the football players for free. So that's a way they can come afterwards, get a good meal. People that may not be able to have a meal or so forth like that, really interact with the community. But it's given that a little bit more of a perspective, but some of the businesses really had problems struggling through the pandemic. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I was actually in D.C. with the National League of Cities, and I was on the National League of Board of Directors, and we went to the White House, and we started the conference not even know what COVID was. And at the end of it, we were realizing what it was, and I actually got a briefing from the vice president, and went back and I started a Zoom call where I was working with residents every week, talking about, they were stressed, they didn't know what was going on, kind of walk people through the pandemic, but really got involved with the businesses and helped a lot of them, because a lot of them didn't know what was going on, what to do. With the restrictions, I was on a weekly call with the governor's office and the Oregon Health Authority, where I was able to fight for these businesses, talk about these barriers, saying, these businesses don't always have the outdoor resources. They can't be open, but you're going to take people that this is their livelihood. They put all their money into it. They might have a lien against their house. Really worked with them, and there was two really anchor businesses in Tigard that I really worked well with. Tigard Bull, which has been around since 1954, he didn't know what to do. He was closed. He was spending $25,000 a month to stay closed, because he has the equipment in there. There's the machines that clean the lanes,
right. And
if you don't use those after a day or two, they'll seize up. So he still had to buy the oil, still had to pay the electric bill, still had to run the balls down the lanes and do everything like that. But he wasn't getting help from anyone. So I was really in there on a regular basis, helping him out, figuring out how we could get more attention, helping write letters to the governor's office, getting the chamber to help write letters on his benefit, and same thing with Joy Theater. And finally, it hit to a point where they called me up one time and they said, "Oh, hey, great, John. He can be open now. He can have other lane or something like that, but we can't have any food or drink." And I said, "Well, bowling alleys, they don't make money off the shoe rentals and the lane rentals. They make it off the food and the alcohol and all those parts." And the problem is on council, I kept pushing and saying that we need to support these businesses. We need to give more. And we had people on council, even my opponent that I'm running against said, "Well, we've done enough for businesses. We need to help out the residents." And the residents, they've been, they need help too, but the people that weren't employed are at least getting that $600 extra bump of a check every week. And that was helping them out, but the businesses weren't getting anything. And so with me having a business mindset and having a business, I understood a lot more that people need a little bump. They need, a couple $1,000s. I was told that, well, let's do a loan instead of a grant. And I said, well, someone that's struggling needs a grant. They're not going to take a loan. They're not going to, when they're having problems, they're not going to take that. So I kept pushing to get more money. Or it was said on by some people that really didn't know business and said, well, anyone that's doing more than 400,000 in sales doesn't need a grant for a couple thousand. But they don't understand margins. They don't understand how these businesses work. Or I think it was actually beginning of this year in January when in the county, Chair Harrington was thinking about on a Tuesday, following that Thursday, basically getting rid of indoor dining. And it would have been after everyone kind of came out of the pandemic, everyone hired new staff, everyone had the food and everything like that, and they didn't realize how much that would have hurt them. You would have to lose staff, you would have to throw away all that food. So having a business owner that really is in there working can really help the businesses and fight for them, because you can speak from experience. Because I also have my own insurance agency that I've had for 10 years, so I've been a business owner before getting into the restaurant industry. But that's been my big thing, has really been there listening and also being seen during that time. I was going to all the businesses, I was talking to people where everyone from the city and everyone from the council wasn't down in downtown Tigard or through the city to really give a hand and reach out to them. And that's what makes a difference, and that's why I'm so passionate about the community, is that you need to have someone there representing, you need someone listening, you need someone to understand what's happening and then fighting for them. That's what we need to do, especially during a pandemic, and there was no one to be seen except for me. And so that's why if you go through Tigard, you see all these 8-foot signs all over in residents' yards or in businesses or commercial properties. Because also I was working with Planet Fitness. They were also struggling as a gym on how they have people. They open a new location, but they can't have people working out, and people need to be able to work out, and especially during the pandemic where you're not getting out and being active, you need a place to work out. So there's all these businesses that we're trying to talk to people and trying to figure out, even figure out what's going on from week to week. And I really spent so much time with all these different businesses where I spent easily dozens of hours a week just helping these businesses, fighting for them, giving them resources, because they didn't know where to find the resources for. So when I found something new, I'd send it to them. I'd say, this is going to be a new announcement, or here's the change, or let's get together and here's who you can talk to tell your story of what you're doing to follow protocols and what you can do to be open.
So let's talk about some very specific topics that is affecting Tigard. Let's talk a little bit about the crime and the homelessness. We're definitely not like Portland. We have different law enforcement's presence in Washington County than we do in Multnomah County. But talk to me a little bit, what does that look like for Tigard, and what do people really need to be concerned about?
So in Tigard, one of the big things that I focus on is public safety is really number one, or up there with number one as my campaign. Is back in 2020, I worked hard to run and operate the campaign safety levy to hire 8 new officers and a school resource officer and provide mental health de-escalation training. Because we have 5 patrol districts in Tigard, but any time we only had 3 or 4 officers that were patrolling those areas. Through the pandemic, if we didn't have that levy go through, we would have been at a lot less, because we had people that either got affected by COVID, had COVID, or had leaves or different reasons, and that actually was able to still keep us at that same level. We're still trying to get back up to the operating level we need to, but the police academies to go send new officers through is delayed because of COVID, and so many people now are trying to put it in there. But we need to do more of a focus in the city onto our police and having money for it. We're starting to do a lot of other projects besides police, parks, roads, maintenance, the basic things the city should provide. We're starting to do too much other pet projects, and we're not putting enough money there where we don't have enough officers patrolling the streets. We don't have enough people walking through the downtown area or the Triangle, and we're starting to see more crime, more graffiti, more break-ins, and more homeless. And there's a portion where of homeless where we have resources and let's get them the help they need, but there's a portion where we're starting to see. I just had a meeting that I put together last week, or at the beginning of the week, around Thursday, with about 6 or 7 city staff and about 18 or 20 business owners, that we're just talking about all the stuff that's going downtown that people don't realize, that there's more of a homeless problem. There's people defecating behind businesses. There's people that are going into businesses and using the bathroom, or there's people that are causing problems in there. And we're starting to see more, especially with Portland starting to do more of the sweeps. It's coming our way. And so if we don't have enough officers or enough budget to have them be able to patrol the main street or patrol the neighborhoods, or even jail space is a big issue. But really, we need to have that's a county or more of a different issue, but we need to have enough officers to patrol in there so we show the presence that people feel safe. I did a listening session with some citizens, and they were talking with the chief. People said that Tigard used to be like Mayberry, where you could leave your front door open, you could leave your car unlocked, and you felt safe. But the last couple of years, it's changed. It's not been that way anymore. And being a native Tigard resident, I want to make sure it stays safe and make sure that people can get around, because if you don't have safety, then you're going to start losing people in your community. I've already heard some people, they've lived in Tigard forever, they're saying if this doesn't change, I've got people that are walking through my backyard doing all kinds of crazy things. If it doesn't change, I'm moving out, and I don't want to see people moving out of Tigard. And with homeless services, I'm on the board of directors of Family Promise, and we help families and some single individuals, but we help them with a long-term track of getting back into housing. Some of these programs are where you can stay at a day shelter, you can stay somewhere for a couple of days. This program is with the families. Really more about it is we have a day shelter where we can drive kids to and from school, provide daycare, help them with resources, whether it's saving, whether it's what obstacles, what basically made it so they're homeless, and what obstacles is preventing them from getting back into a permanent home. And we'll work for about 3 months, 6 months, or to a year or 2 years, where we have a place they stay at night, and during the day they can do all the laundry and stuff like that, but get them back into a permanent housing situation. And we're just doing more programs like that where we have the resources, but we also have to figure out there is a percentage of homeless that don't want any help and they don't want to do anything, and that's what's kind of causing the problem through our businesses and through our residents. So we need to figure out more kind of what we can put in place so we can keep the businesses who are paying all that money to be there and want to serve the public, so they can stay open and they're not affected by it.
So what's your position? Does Tigard need to be able to build more shelters in order to be able to house more people? And if that's so, what about the people that say, it's great that we build shelters, but I don't want that in my backyard?
So there's a lot of resources out there, and what we need to direct people to those resources, and we need to use them a lot more. And for another examples, we have a couple different affordable housing projects we've built in Tigard. But my thought on those is that if someone's living there, have it. I went through it with Ben. There's a League of Oregon Cities. We did a tour of a couple different affordable housing projects and things like that. They have some of them where someone can stay there for a year or two, where they can have a reduced rent, and then they can find a place where they can live and move to. Or if we build some other, you can do tiny villages, or you can do programs too, where you can do like Habitat for Humanity, where they can basically do a loan based on what their income is, but find different housing models to get people back into there. But with the not my backyard, I think when you start looking at the two differences as opposed to, do you want to have something where people are going through neighborhoods, breaking into cars or houses, or do you want to have a facility that can take care of it? Ideally, we'd like to have in Tigard is have a facility where you could have everything, where you could have mental health experts in there, so they could provide mental health, drug counseling, services, so someone can go in there and figure out the services they need, but they could also stay there. And I think we have a program in the works that looks like we're going to be doing something like that. It's coming, maybe in the next couple months. But if we could do a location that people can go to, I think that would also be a great way, because the other thing we face right now is if there is homeless in downtown or in the area, and the police ask them to move on, we need to have a place that they can be able to go and stay to, and we don't have enough rooms right now, Tigard. I know Hillsboro's looking at building more of a permanent, bigger structure. I think Beaverton is. Portland has a lot more money. They're able to move a little quicker, so I think they're looking at that a little bit more, where we can basically direct someone to go there. But I think that's what we really need to do, and make those resources available to them.
So what's your opinion right now with the state government? They have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars they've invested into mental health and into providing shelter space for people across the state. If you're elected mayor and you're newly elected, also working with a newly elected governor, What's your opinion on that? Do you see a more difficult path if it's Tina Kotek or Christine Drazen or Betsy Johnson? Who are you looking forward to being able to work with?
Well, with city government, I mean, I've been on the council for 8 years, and with being either on the council or mayor, it's a nonpartisan position. So through my 8 years of actually being on council, I've worked with both Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and that's a skill I've always had, is to be able to work with people no matter what and focus on the issue. I always think that there's ways to come together and work on these items, but I think with all the money you're saying that's out there, is there needs to be, I think, a little bit more metrics and accountability. We have this money, we're giving this money to organizations, but we need to see when they get this money, what are we getting from it, and is it actually working, or if it's not working? Because if we give an organization a couple $1 million, but we never check back and see, okay, well, how many people came in, and did this lead to them actually getting from housing, or is it just a temporary stop and they went on to something else? And if you look at business, you give somebody money, you look at your return on investment. But we're not doing that. We're not stating, okay, what works, what doesn't work. Voters are passing something, we're giving money out, and we think, oh, we did something, but I don't think it's necessarily working. We have a lot of different organizations, we have a lot of different numbers people can call, but we need to really concise that down to, like, okay, who do you call for mental health? Who do you call for this? Because there's so many number of information, but if you're someone with mental health illness, or you're someone that's homeless, you don't really have the resources to Google or look at finding who to call or what to do. That's where we need to have more coordinators that can work and actually put them into the proper places and use those funds properly, and then also have some kind of a metric system to see, is this working? Is it the best bang, or do we need to switch to something else? Because I think that we're not really tracking that right now, and we're spending a bunch of money. I think it might be going the wrong direction.
Well, when we talk about spending money, and we talk about money that's coming down from the state, and how that's actually being distributed, through the counties and through the cities, I think one of the biggest hardships for cities right now is that there really isn't a coordinated approach for our housing community to get people that are homeless into some sort of supporting housing mechanism. But on top of that, you throw on the drug addiction problem that we currently have in Oregon. It's only making things that much worse. And we literally can see the pictures and just walk downtown and we see people that are dying from overdose. So talk to us a little bit about your stance when it comes to Measure 110, and has Measure 110 worked in Tigard, or do you think that it's something that needs to be repealed and relooked at?
Yeah, and so I'll answer the first part. The one part is that, because we've looked at a city as what do we want to do for homelessness, but the thing is you can't necessarily do something just as a city, and I think even you can't do anything as a region. When that Metro bond, the wraparound services got passed, I remember I was in city meetings leading up to that, and I said, if we're just going to pass this for Portland, and it's not going to be something statewide, we're going to put a spotlight on Portland that's going to say, come to Portland, because now all of a sudden we have all this money. We have $300 million a year. Years ago, I went to a conference, and there's actually a website called Squat the Planet, where people can take a look at it, and they can look at areas and say, okay, who has money, who maybe might be a little easier on homeless as opposed to someone else. My thought was always, let's do something statewide for homeless, because what happens is in our community is we're shifting the homeless problem back and forth. When I was at the meeting the other day, what they do is, what happens is they say, well, where do you live? Where are you from? So someone might be in Lake Oswego. They say, well, Tigard. Well, then they ship them out. They push them out from the city. And so what we're doing is, someone goes to Lake Oswego, they get pushed to Beaverton, they get pushed to that. So you're shuffling that homeless person around, but you're not actually doing a program. If we actually have some kind of a same rules all the way around, and we can actually work on it, that would be better, rather than shifting the problem around. But 110 has been a huge problem. Many businesses I've talked to, they're in their flower beds, they're picking up needles, they're seeing drug deals going on, and talking to people, I think it was sold as you could get help or mental health or drug addiction counseling and services. As far as what I've heard is, as of yet, maybe only 6 or 10 people have actually taken advantage of that. So what they thought they're going to put in place, the structure's not in place, but it's just caused a bigger problem. And just talking with the police or talking with businesses, the biggest thing happens, people are calling and say, hey, there's someone doing drugs in front of my business, there's someone doing drugs in the street, and they're saying, well, with 110 now, we can't do anything about it. And I don't think people realize all that problem. And yes, I believe it needs to either be redone or repealed, because it's creating a bigger problem that people had no idea of. And I don't know if people actually know how bad it is until you actually go to some of these areas, you talk to these business owners that see people though go into their bathrooms and do drugs or leaving things all over. I mean, and never in Tiger did I think about that we were actually going to have to figure out how to have some kind of sharps containers or ways to pick up needles. Because what happens is, though, the businesses call the city, but they're like, well, are we going to go down there and pick up these needles? And then the business owner's like, well, I guess we have to, but then now where do we put them? And that has never been Tiger as I've known it. So, and that just happened in the last year or two. And it lines up with 110 being passed.
So let's change a little bit of gears here, because we've talked a lot about business, some government spending. Let's talk about our children. There's been recent studies that have come out that show across the nation our children have struggled because of the pandemic lockdowns. Now that we're coming out of it, we are definitely failing our children. We rank about 46th in the nation when it comes to math, reading, and writing here in the state of Oregon. As mayor, what do you hope to be able to accomplish in being able to help our children achieve better outcomes?
And then that's a question I've been asked a lot about education and so forth. And the one thing is that being mayor, you have the school districts, so you have the school board, and you have the city. And even though we can talk and we can impact it, we don't have a direct say on it. It'd be the same thing if a school board member came to the city and said, I want you to do this. But with addressing the issue, I think one of the things we're really missing in the school is getting back to the core basics of just the reading, writing, and arithmetic. And a long time ago when I ran for state representative, I was, even back then, a lot of my platform there's a European model where maybe you might be great at math and science, but you're horrible at English and social studies. But you put those together, and what happens is someone fails maybe English and social studies where they feel like a failure, but they're actually extremely smart in another area. Or also bringing the trades into it. I was just talking with some of the union builders, and they're talking about how just bringing so many different people from out of state into the state to work on these projects. We need to get back to in elementary school or even middle school, start talking about how the trades are actually a great way to do it, and you can actually go through and have your education paid for, and actually have something that's going to pay maybe a six-figure salary. We're talking about a lot of people that have school loans and debt and things like that, and they're like, I don't know how to pay for it. Because I don't think a lot of times people look at really what direction should I go that actually would be viable to get a job. There's people that, if you're going to be an attorney or a doctor, things, obviously you need that education, but sometimes people go to school and they end up then working at Starbucks or working a job that they never even went to school for. But I don't think a lot of people realize that they can go into the trades. They don't have to worry about taking student loans out, and they can learn a skill. And we have, with all the growth around here, and especially with Nike and Intel and all those, there's all kinds of construction, there's all kinds of building. We're in Tigard. We're looking at bringing another 500 acres into Tigard. There's going to be just a lot of building, with either housing or commercial or all those. But we need those skilled laborers in this area. And in school, I think we need to really start focusing on how do we look at what skill sets, what's the best outcome for people, and get back to the basics of just treating the basic, math, writing, arithmetic, and all that.
So when we think about the building right now, Oregon, we're behind thousands and thousands of homes. There's so many Oregonians right now that are paying atrocious rents, and it's probably cheaper for them to actually purchase a home than actually rent a home, but as we both know, there's not availability right now. What do you think are some of the things that the city of Tigard can do to help businesses want to build more housing in the city?
Well, the big part is bringing more land in, and that's what happened a couple years ago. Was we were looking at a portion, it's called River Terrace, it's on the backside of Bull Mountain by Roy Rogers, and we were looking at bringing that in, but it was something where we didn't really have the staff time to do it. So I actually kind of looked, and I worked with a developer in the city and put together a contract so the developer could actually pay for staff or for consultants to bring that into it. Now we're looking at bringing River Terrace 2.0 in, which is going to be more property brought into the city of Tigard. And what we need to start looking at is working with the builders, the developers, to see what needs to be done to be building more affordable housing. Because when I go to a lot of this, I talk to a lot of them, they say they want to, but we have SDCs, the system development charges, and those can be a large portion of what it is to build affordable housing. We need to talk with them rather than us trying to figure out ideas and then push it onto the builders or the developers. We need to meet with them and listen to them, and that's one of the big things I've always pushed on council and well as mayor is a lot more listening. Too often, cities and governments want to kind of come up with an idea and then push it onto someone and say this is what you should do. But there's not as much listening to these stakeholders, finding out from them. hey, what would it take for you to do to build affordable housing? What would it take for you to build something that we could get that would be a lower amount for people to get into? What do you need from us, or what needs to be changed? What needs to be done, rather than us trying to guess or put something in place and then they have to adapt to it. I was instrumental in council of bringing forward SDC deferral, because what happens when a developer or a builder comes in and they take out that permit, they have to pay those SDCs, and that might be $60,000. Well, the project might not be done for another year and a half. They've got to carry that. They got to pay interest. That's cash flow. They're tied up. I got it so that we actually have deferral, so it's not actually SDCs aren't collected until the final inspection. That way, it gives people time and actually saves some money off there. I mean, it's not a lot, but it's one of the ways to work on it. Another way is I proposed, when we got on council and got it passed, to waive SDCs on ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, where if someone has a basement, they can turn that basement into a living source. But with the current way it was, you had to pay also maybe $20,000-$30,000 in SDCs, which it makes it not affordable for someone to be able to take part of their home and turn it into somewhere where they can live. And that's also kind of a win for both sides, where you can find something affordable housing you have already built out, but also that person that owns that, they can also help subsidize their rent or something like that, or their mortgage payment. Or if they want to build a structure on their property, there's a lot of places in Tigard where people are living on half acres. They could easily build a unit or two on their property that then could basically be lower income or lower rent for someone to move into. Again, it's win-win, but with those SDCs being so high, that's when they have put in place that was then allowed to do and have people build those.
So what do you think is going to happen with Tigard, and when we think about the housing community, as far as when the pandemic happened and we have just a low amount of inventory, home values have definitely gone through the roof. Mm-hmm. And in certain areas, we've seen them anywhere between 30 to 50%, increase in home values. Do you think that we're on the verge of breaking that bubble now that interest rates now are 7%? The federal government is trying to control inflation, which is going to bring, purchasing power down. So what do you think is going to happen to people that have purchased homes that right now in Tigard? It's very common to see a $500,000 or even $1 million home being built in Tigard now. What do you think is going to happen 2 or 3 years down the line when maybe that property value isn't there anymore?
Well, I definitely see that. I mean, it was just a year ago where you could, 10 offers in the first second, and mm-hmm. and now talking to a realtor, actually, Tom Anderson, who used to be a previous counselor, we did a forum last week that was at the Broadway Rose with Tigard Life put on, and he was talking about, he's a realtor, and he's talking about it's crickets out there now because the interest rates went up there, homes aren't selling. And so I think there is going to be a bit of a bubble, and I couldn't believe some people when they're, the house might be, on the market for maybe $700,000 and they're offering $80,000 over. I didn't understand that whole model, so I see it's got to, I think, eventually go back. I mean, the prices of houses are just going up where it doesn't even make sense anymore of what they are. So I would see them going backwards.
So what's going to be your plan to be able to help Oregonians, one, be able to stay in their homes, or as we're building, literally thousands of units right now, we see it in Tigard all over the city. We see housing projects. I live right there off of Roy Rogers, and in that area that you were just discussing, and we see all this new development all over the place, all over that area of Bull Mountain. And so with the price of lumber right now, price of materials, price of for getting labor, it's super expensive right now. So how are we going to be able to control that before it just completely gets out of hand? What do you think as the mayor you're going to be able to do to help Oregonians?
I mean, at the mayor, as far as Oregonians, I'm not going to won't be able to have that much of an impact. I mean, with in Tigard, really what I have control over is just kind of zoning codes, what kind of homes can be built, what kind of homes can't be built, what we rank our SDCs at. We just at council last week. Our SDCs for a home for water were about 11,000. We actually were able to reduce them down to 6,000. So that's something that should be able to make the cost of houses a little bit more affordable. Mm-hmm. So if we take a look at expenditures, in Tigard, one thing that's nice is we have the lowest tax rate in the region, or at least in the area in Washington County. We're at $2.51 per assessed thousand. So we have a lower rate. We've been really fiscally responsible with our money. But as far as the building, that's going to be the developer, so it's just going to be really working with them. We can always, as a group, there's a Metropolitan Mayors Consortium, so you always can work on any kind of regulations or rules that would really, prevent people from building, or try to at least go in a direction that makes more affordable housing, or make projects that work for people. That's more what it is really to encourage, if it's, smaller homes, or whatever it can be that can get something where people can get to housing that it's more affordable.
So when we think about building more of these units, and we'll shift gears here in a second, but I got one last question on this topic, is the urban growth boundary. We definitely have, our farming community. They want to be able to keep those boundaries there because that's, their quality of life, and that's the product that they use to be able to support their families. Where can we go with the boundary that we currently have right now in Tigard, and with the need of the amount of housing that we need?
That's a big thing that I think we definitely need to push on Metro, who determines the urban growth and what gets in there. We have a lot more expansion, but there's more of a model that we want, higher density in areas, and that may not always work with the infrastructure. You might not be able to have enough people there. You're not going to have enough parking, and there's a percentage of people that want homes. But that's where I think we're going to be fortunate enough where we're going to bring about 500 acres into Tigard, but there's part of areas where they need to be able to expand. We need to be able to have more land for people to be able to get in there, but also we need to have more resources. And I think when we build these communities too, we need to have communities that have places that someone can walk and go get groceries. They can go get their services they want. We need to make more kind of communities that include all those different resources. Mm-hmm. We're building these communities that people are kind of spread out all over the place. But that's one of the big things, is really push back on Metro and open up more of the urban growth boundary.
So let's talk a little bit about Highway 99. Highway 99 is one of those places I avoid just because of the traffic. There's just not a lot of lanes. There's lights almost every few blocks, right? So when there's a traffic jam, there's a traffic jam. And so I try to go around 99. If I don't need to go down 99, I try to avoid it. But that's really bad for our businesses that are there, because there are a ton of businesses on 99, but just that traffic jam is just terrible. What would you like to see happen with Highway 99?
I mean, 99 has been an issue forever, and I know that we're kind of doing a regional study. We've actually got some money to take a look at it and see what we can do, and that's a project that we have been lobbying with our federal representatives to give more money, and it's really working kind of a coalition of the cities around us, because even though there's a good portion of it in Tigard, we need to partner up with Tualatin and Sherwood in the area, and we have been, and we need to keep that coalition together, that we all kind of lobby together of looking at a study and looking at what we need to do that would make that so flow of traffic comes through more.
Can you expand the roads? Can you make it bigger?
There's a lot of businesses that are close on it, so it's a matter of, can we expand it, or what else can we do? We have been widening parts of 217, and so that should be, when that's kind of finalized, that should help a little bit. But we need to take a look and see what we can do with 99, or what options there are. I'm not an engineer, so I know exactly what we can do. I know I did a couple years ago a conference where there's something similar to 99 where they just took the road down and then they kind of took off ramps to places, and that solved it. But that would just be that'd be an outrageous amount of money to do a project like that. But I think we need to figure out also what other ways there are for getting people to move around town, and do a study and see where all these people are. Is it a lot of people just passing through, or is it a lot of people that are coming through? And if we figure out some kind of a, maybe there's a bypass or something, because I know that we have a lot of this through traffic, and we want to make Tigard and 99W more attractable for businesses and for people to stop in there. But also, if a lot of that's just congesting it. But anyone that's lived in Tigard knows you don't use 99W. You find the side roads, you find the spots where you can cross over.
Yeah.
But I think part of it, and I mentioned this at the forum last week, was also look at, I mentioned, make it a little more walkable through our community, and make our trails safer. I know that there was in our downtown area, someone that worked down there had moved and bought a house close by and thought, okay, I'm gonna be able to use the trails and walk down there. Well, our trails aren't safe. We need to have, kind of going back to the safety issues, patrolling and lighting our trails. But we also have a lot of gaps in our community of sidewalks and trails and bike lanes, where if we were to be able to open up that, we could have where a lot more Tigard residents, they love to walk, they love to bike, and when I came on the council, I was like, what do we have for a sidewalk fund? Because there's a lot, it doesn't seem to be walkable. And at that time, our tagline was the most walkable community in the Northwest. So I'm like, okay, our tagline is the most walkable community in the Northwest, but how much money we have? And we go, oh, basically at the end of the year, if there's any change in the cushion, we'll build like 100 feet of sidewalk. And so I proposed and had a sidewalk gap study taken a look at to see where the gaps are, what it would cost. And we found, of the main roads, arterial roads, I think it was something like 100 million. There's some of that we've been getting grants and things we've been fixing, but there's a possibility of doing like a sidewalk gap bond where we could ladder it, where it would actually look like more of like a $30 million bond. But we could do a one-time thing where we could put a lot of those sidewalks and bike lanes in there where people, rather than when they get in their car and they go drive somewhere, there's a lot of the stuff that is close by, but people are getting their cars to go into downtown. They're getting places to go. And so if we were to just fill in some of those gaps, not that would be a fix-all for that, but I think that would be one option. Another option is, and I've been loud about this, is TriMet. People pay TriMet tax, whether it's employers as it comes out of people's paychecks. We send a large amount of money to Portland, but we only get about 20 or 25%. Don't hold me on that number, but we get a small percentage of that in Tigard.
Wow.
So we're sending the money down to Portland, but we don't have the bus services we need here. I know that I've talked to people and they say, I'd love to take a bus or something to go watch a Blazer game down to Portland. I'd love it because I don't have to deal with traffic or find parking. But the problem is we don't have enough bus lines that run at a regular, schedule. Or maybe you can get to the Blazer game, but you can't get home.
Right.
And we have a lot of employees that, or people that work at companies that they could get to their job, but they can't get back. And we're just really getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the transit. Not that that's the fix-all, but if we had more of a proper bus system in place and we could get around. And I've always kind of talked to TriMet where they have a model where it's kind of like a wagon tire where they want to go out to these communities, but I said you need to have a spider web. You need to connect these side communities because if you want to go somewhere, you shouldn't have to go up here and then back down to get to somewhere where you can just go over to it. So we need to work more on a integrated system rather than everything going to Portland and having their whole light rail system down there. We need to have a better transit system. We need to have it so people can walk, and we have more options. I think that will be a little bit of reduction in congestion in Tigard or on 99W because people that want to get around town could have easier ways to get around town.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Tigard is the landscape. I don't think people, unless you live in Tigard, it's difficult. Going up Bull Mountain, you're not going to go up Bull Mountain on a bike unless you're a biker. And I tried that once and I almost passed out, just trying to get halfway up. It would be great, if we're thinking about how to be able to, exactly what you're saying, do that spider web effect so that way we can get through from one part of the city to the other. But it's not. It's really dedicated to Highway 99, and that's not always very consistent with, having that ability to be able to go to different parts of the city, go to downtown, connect over to Beaverton. It's not there. And so I think we're a very democratic state. We clean energy. I believe in clean energy, but I don't think we're investing the right amount of money to help with that transportation outside of Portland. No. All the money is being spent on Portland, but guess what? We have large communities, and right now, honestly, people aren't going to Portland anymore. The crime rate is too high. It's too dangerous to be in downtown right now, so a lot of people are spending more time in the suburban areas or on the outskirts of Metro. I wish that they would spend a little bit more money helping out our local families and communities, being able to get to point A to point B to make it more walkability and more accessibility. But I'd like to change the subject here for a second when we think about Tigard, and what are some new ideas that you'd like to be able to bring to the table to generate some more revenue into the Tigard budget? I know not everybody, right now we have a need for police presence, but everybody's a little bit tired of, the residents having to pick up the tab for everything. We are very high in tax rate, when it compares to the rest of the nation. Is there any other business opportunities to bring in new businesses so that way we can get some more tax from them, and that the everyday common taxpayer like myself doesn't have to continue to pay more and more in their property taxes?
What really would help on that is we need to do more commercial or more business in Tigard. We have a high percentage of homes, so we're a lot more of a bedroom community. And people think, okay, well, you're building all these new homes. You guys must be flush with cash. Yeah. But it costs more to service homes than it does for a business. For example, to make a correction from an earlier statement, is the city of Tualatin has, I think, a few cents less for their property tax. I think we're at 251. I think they're at 248 or something like that. But they're doing okay with cash flow because they have Lamb Research. They have all these different big industrial companies out there where it doesn't take city services, but they get tax on all that property value, also the property inside it. So they have all the machines and all that. They pay the taxes on that. So those big businesses are paying in Tualatin, and they have a lot of money on that. In Tigard, we have along 72nd, we have a little bit of industrial. We have Washington Square, which is great. That's one of the biggest malls in the nation. But we need to work on more commercial to bring those taxes into the city, and that's what that expansion and part of that River Terrace I was talking about is incorporate a lot more to commercial in there to bring more money into the city that will actually be able to help out, and they'll actually be able to help out with the budget more rather than taking away from it. And something with the budget is, and I've been pushing for, I want to look at even more as mayor, is looking at our core services, making sure we're funding those, and then taking a look at those extras. Do we need these extra programs? Find out from the community, do we really want to spend these dollars on these or not? A perfect example is years and years ago, a lot of people, anyone in Tigard knows about the light rail question, whether you're for it or not, is it going to come down 99W or not? But it had to be about, maybe it was 2010, 2012, I was part of a group. We went around and collected signatures to be able to put on the ballot, and it passed for us to be able to, as part of our charter, for Tigard residents to be able to vote on before any money is spent on that project. Because my thought was, and I even had people that were for light rail and people were against it, but everyone agreed, if we're going to spend $1 billion or $2 billion, we should have a say in voting on it. And a lot of times governments or cities don't always work as well or communicate or get input from residents. And I thought, well, the perfect way was, if you want this to pass, you got to really work with the residents and talk about it. So I think it's a lot more of that, is really being fiscally responsible with the money we spend, but also if we get those big projects, we really get buy-in from people that if they want to do it. But we really need to work on a lot more of the commercial and keeping those businesses in Tigard too. The last thing we want is to be able to have some and focus too much. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job at all on our economic development. We're seeing, that's one of the things I've been raising a lot on council, is I see Hillsborough just running circles around this. Beaverton, they're bringing in restaurants. They're bringing in places that people want to go eat and drink and have fun at. And downtown Tigard, we have probably about 10 open storefronts. We have a lot of storefronts that are open. We have a lot of places. It's always kind of said in Tigard that, if you want to go entertain a client or you want to go on a nice date night or something like that, there's not a nice place to really go eat in Tigard. There's not really places to go. People are going to cities like Lake Oswego. They're going to downtown Sherwood. They're going to other cities, and there's no reason why, with us being at the crossroads of 217, 99W, and I-5, why we shouldn't have more of that in there, and we're not doing the job to bring that. We keep at council, we keep getting presented these different programs, and it's that almost like you build it and they'll come, but it doesn't. You need to be active and actually prospect to get them into there. We do have funds. We have funds set up where we can actually, if a business comes in, we can help with the build out. We can help with facade improvements. We can have the money to do there. We're just not actively pushing for it or taking advantage of this, and we keep ending up with, especially in the downtown area, real estate companies or insurance businesses or things like that, where that's not something that people want to walk on Main Street and go look at let's go look at the insurance agent or the real estate agent. So bringing more of that in there was going to help that tax roll.
So why do you think that's not happening now? What is the current mayor or the council not doing that you would change?
I think with being a lot of times with being a lone voice on there and kind of going back with having more of having owned a business and having a lot more of a knowledge of business, is there's not the pushback. We need to have someone that says, hey, this is what we want, and if this is not happening, then we need to fix it and come up with it. And there's been a lot of times when items have been presented to council where it's like, this is some great program, but no one really wants to challenge it and say, well, but how's this going to work, and what's it going to do? This is a great program, but how's someone going to know about it? And just because you built it, they're not coming. And so that's what needs to be, is really, as a council, as a push and say, no, this isn't working. We need something that works. And why are we spending all this time and staff money on programs that's not getting us anywhere?
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the race. So right now, as far as polling is concerned, how do you think you're faring up between you and your other two competitors?
So at the Tigard race, there's not really, polling. That's always my favorite question, because people are so used to seeing polls for the governor's race, and there's that level of money and so much money being spent. There's regularly polls coming in, but the Tigard level, the council and mayor races, you never really have polls. And I don't know if I'd really want a poll, because my kind of philosophy is just keep working. If I saw a poll and I thought I was ahead, I might ease off the gas. But what I can really tell, and what I've been telling people, I kind of went back to it, is, I talk to people, and there's always kind of the concept, that person with the most signs wins. I don't know if that's always true, or some people like signs, don't, but it does show support. And with me having so many signs out there, I have people like, you just see it in so many places. The Tiger Bull I was telling you about earlier, they have a sign of mine on both sides, and they changed their marquee that says "Vote for Goodhouse. He saved our business." But with really talking to people, and when I'm knocking on doors, I'm getting close to 1,000 doors knocked, is really talk about the difference between my opponents. One of my opponents has been on council for about 3 years, hasn't been active, has a full-time job, and I say this the mayor's race is coming down to experience and availability. So my one opponent doesn't have the availability. As a Tigard mayor, with us having so much, we have our own water source, we have so many projects, we have we have so many different conversations. It's almost a full-time job now, and you need to have someone that's available all anytime. I have the two businesses, but they're self-sufficient. They're both running themselves, where I can basically pick up any time if I need to run down to Salem and lobby our legislators, if I need to go back to DC and lobby our legislators, or if I need to have meetings throughout the day. There's a lot of these meetings that happen throughout the day. And so my one opponent not being able to be available and has limited experience, hasn't done much. I've been on the council for 8 years, as I mentioned. Been on all kinds of boards and committees, from the League of Oregon Cities on finance committees, budget, transportation. With the National League of Cities, I'm on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. In the last couple of years, I've worked on getting direct funding for transportation projects to our city. So a lot of times what happens when you're talking about saving money is the money will go to ODOT. They tell us what they want to do. We come back with it. They keep changing it. By the time we get it, inflation's gotten to a point where either we can't do the project or we got to put money in there.
Yeah.
And so we can get direct funding. So we need someone that's actually can take. It takes years and years to get these things done. So you need to have that built-in experience. My other opponent has been a resident of Tigard for 12 years. Ran for governor, lost, but hasn't been involved. Hasn't even, as far as I see, hasn't even been on any kind of a committee or a nonprofit. A lot of times people, what I realized when I ran back in 2010 for council and I lost, was Tigard residents really want to see a resume. They want to see what you've done. They want to actually look at something, especially mayor. I mean, if you're jumping on council, that's one thing, but jumping in mayor, they want to see your experience, how you handle things. Getting into government, it can be one thing you say, oh, I've run a business, but city government is totally different. There's processes you got to go through. You got to think of different angles and everything, both sides. You can't just jump in there. And so, not having any experience, not having any support, looking at both, I have the both package. I have the experience and the availability, and neither of my opponents have those. And that's something that, to really represent Tigard and a lot of the things we just went through, to be able to really have, to get the resources we want, to have the talk to the agencies of Metro, TriMet, ODOT, to really work on these plans. You need someone that's going to have the experience, already has the built-in connections, have already worked on these things, has a proven track record, and has the time to do it.
So, your two opponents, I believe, Heidi and Nick, what makes you different from those two opponents, not as far as the level of experience? I've seen both of their profiles. I know that Heidi has, been on the commission for a few years. Nick doesn't really. He has more of a, I believe, tech background, and considers more of himself as an independent, and Heidi more as a liberal Democrat. I can see the people that are endorsing her. What makes you different from the two of them, aside from your level of experience?
The big part is really just being active in the community. I really listen to people, am involved, and when I meet with people, I've had many times I've met with people and they said they've met with the other two opponents, and they say I can really tell when I meet with you that you have a passion for Tigard. You're not just using this as a stepping stone somewhere else or do something else. You have a passion for Tigard. You have compassion when I talk to you. I see that you listen, you care, and you actually get invested into it. And that's why I have been on the council, and that's why I'm running for mayor, because I am passionate about Tigard. I've lived here. I want to see it be the way it is. I can see what it can do, and the compassion and listening. And the biggest thing really is listening. also is meeting with people and finding out what needs to be done, and talking to a lot of people, and I think also being creative. I mean, that's where I come up with a lot of times in council. There's got to be ways to be creative and look outside the box, and not be afraid to challenge staff. My opponent on council doesn't. I don't really ever see her challenge staff, and sometimes, staff's job is meant to bring us stuff, but it's not always that start all end all. We need to say, well, wait, did you look at these options? Did you look at other options? And make sure that we're looking at all angles. But I think that's the biggest part. It really does. It's just really my passion and availability and to listen and known in the community.
So right now in this election cycle, it's Oregon's very unique. This election cycle, typically the national media doesn't cover Oregon because we vote a certain way, and for the first time, Oregon looks like it may be turning more purple than it is blue. And so when we think about your candidacy and the things that that we've talked about today, what do you say to the people that say John's only worried about small businesses? He's only worried about corporate greed. He doesn't really care about regular people that are living in Tigard. He wants to give tax breaks to the rich because he's rich too. So what do you say to that?
Well, and that's another thing too, is that I do own a business, and I was represent businesses too, but I also with the average with the residents and everything like that. I'm out there. I talk with people, and I am I've had someone the other day that realized, they asked me, they go, well, what party you are? And they said, I never even thought about, what party you are, because for the whole time you've been on council, you listen to everyone, you represent everyone. And so it's just not business, but I'm also, very socially responsible. With the National League of Cities, I'm the Race, Equity, and Leadership Council. And on that council, we work throughout the nation on training communities on how to work with race issues, equity issues, how to give training resources. There's some communities that, they have no experience, and there's some people that have more, but go through different processes to kind of help each community. And so I've done a lot of that through there, is working on with communities to kind of help elected officials kind of navigate through that, because they're not sure how to talk about it. Because you have sometimes in a community, someone will say, well, we don't have any race problems, because they think it's back to segregation, and we don't have any white drinking fountain and black drinking fountain, but they don't realize there's other parts in there, or they don't understand there's different parts in communities where you have to take a look at it. For example, we were talking about some different policies at council and kind of talking about equity things. They were talking about planting trees, and they said, well, let's just find an open area and plant. We have to do 7,000 or some number really to kind of help with our environment in Tigard. I said, well, actually, going to these committees, what happens, you get a lot of the areas that are either lower income or neighborhoods of people of color. What happens is there's not a lot of trees there. And so what happens, we have during the summer, there's not that tree cover in there, so the houses are usually like 15 degrees hotter. I go, why are we not looking at going through these communities and finding out programs where we can actually plant trees in these neighborhoods, make it more livable, and make it also so it's something that also can help with utility bills or help with quality of life. And another thing on council is we're starting to really get away from seniors. It used to be that seniors are always something you considered about. Are they on a fixed income? How do they get around? What do they want to do? We've really lost that conversation, and that's going to be part of my campaign too, is to really reach back out to the seniors, our senior population. I mean, they're the ones that are around. They're the ones that built our community and built what we're prospering from. But in Tigard, we've really seemed to forget about our seniors, and we haven't worked with them. We haven't outreached to them, and that's going to be a bigger part of it. And that's where I always talk to people, and people are like, when do you sleep? Because I'm so busy, where I'm active on homeless committees, on working with residents, reaching out to people, going to different meetings and actually talking to people and listening to them and helping them work on their solutions. So business can be more of a visible side of it, but I work with all aspects of Tigard, and in the youth and the scouting programs. I do a lot with the youth programs and help out. Have pushed with city council that we keep our fees. There was a talk about maybe raising the fees on our parks to use them, and I say if we do that, we already have a built-in recreation program from our youth. We want to make it easy, so these programs where you get the used to be Tigard Little League, but now it's Diamond Sports. You get the soccer programs, you get the football programs. We make these park rentals affordable and make it so we actually, maybe we're paying to a little bit. We offer these programs where kids can really go and use these sports fields, and that's what I think really makes a good society. 99% of the kids that play sports are never going to go on past it, but it teaches those life skills to work with people. What happens when you run into a difficult situation? How do you treat another person? In Tiger, we're great with our sports. We're winning is second. It's really more about character and how you handle it. And through our programs, we're not afraid to even have a star sit down on the bench if they do something wrong, because it's more about treating and raising a good society of people that are going to be part of it and treat people respectfully. And that's where I really like to focus on too, is just really it doesn't matter who people are. I'll talk to anyone, work with anyone, and really represent everyone. And that's really what has been a strong suit for me, and why I have so much support, is I'm that person that's available, approachable, and listen.
Well, I appreciate what you said. As a person of color, and I have been a strong Democrat, for many years. This election cycle has been really interesting for me, because I've never voted for a Republican ever, and this is the first time that I'm actually crossing political lines. I've endorsed Christine Drazan to be our next governor. I've endorsed other Republican candidates. And I think that the Democratic Party, where we've gotten it wrong, especially for people of color, is that we have tokenized people. We don't really talk about solutions. We just talk about that, we're standing there next to people of color, and we use fancy words, but it doesn't actually show in the policies. It doesn't show in the budget lines of how these things are actually affecting our communities of color. So every time that we have a major movement, it seems to sort of die off, and we don't really change policies. Budgets are still the same, and still communities of color continue to struggle. So I appreciate the comments that you've said, because it sounds like you've put a lot of thought and have made some good positive changes in your role to be able to support communities of color in Tigard. And I know that in Tigard, the Hispanic population is increasing. We have a lot of our communities, but unfortunately, because Tigard is so expensive, generational wealth and property ownership for us is quite difficult in Tigard. What do you, in closing, as our last question, as our time is running out, is what do you hope to be able to accomplish as mayor over the next 4 years to be able to help with some generational wealth for people of color in Tigard?
Well, and I'll back up for a second from the generational wealth. One thing I see with the communities of color that we don't do, and I've been really pushing, is that there's too much of this concept of come to us, or here's our program, here's what we have. There's not of let's go to where those communities. What we need to do is go, where each person's different community or what they have, go to their community centers, go to their events, go to their community, and go to their place and talk to them. Why should you make those communities that you're trying to help and talk about, and like you said, tokenize, why have them come to your spot and make them comfortable, being comfortable, and go there and listen and ask what needs to be done, what helped you, what are you wanting to do, how can we help you? And with the generational wealth, I think by going to those communities and being a community as a whole, then you can work on bringing people together and work on programs and find out what's the barriers. Why are you not getting a home? What's preventing you from getting homes, and what programs can we do? And also do programs that work, because I've talked to many people of color who say, I don't want to be tokenized. I don't want to be some special extra. I'm the same as the person next to me. We both work hard. I shouldn't just get something extra because of my color, but also there is barriers and there is things that happen that people don't realize. They're still carried over from red line districts and all those things. So we need to talk and actually ask and see, or work with it. There's a mortgage broker who specializes just working with the Hispanic community. Go to people like that and say, hey, what do you see as the barriers? Is it working? Is there? Then what can we do as a city to help those different communities actually work on it and actually do something, rather than doing kind of some program you think that, oh, look, we did something, pat ourselves on the back. It's rolling your sleeves up and actually working on it. And that's not what's done. Is there's these little, the little image or the picture, and look what we did, but it's not actually helping and working and actually getting down there.
Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation. I wish we had more time to be able to talk, but I wish you nothing but the luck in your next steps, and hopefully you win and become mayor of Tigard.
Yeah.
And so in closing, I just want to be able to say thank you so much to all of the viewers here for being with us today. Please show up to vote. November 8th is just around the corner. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Take my love from me. beautiful, and your soul revives it all to me endlessly. I can't stop looking in your eyes, the way you hold me tight to me endlessly. Take my love from me, I'll give you everything you want and need. Take my love from me, I'll give you everything you want and need. I want your love, I'll give you all of me. Connection, so deep connection, a fire, soul satisfaction. I want your love, I'll give you all of me. Connection, so deep connection, a fire, soul satisfaction. Take my love from me, I'll give you everything you want and need. Take my love from me, I'll give you everything you want and need.
Baby, tell me yes or no. Me, I no go let you go. You stay inside my heart and soul, oh yeah. Shana, cause I never blow. Baby, I will pray for you, oh my God. And I go to beg for you, no be first. Say I go to give you the round of applause. And I go to eye for you, yeah. Pull up on me, with your booty, pull up on me. Bad girl, pull up on me, with your booty, pull up on me. Yeah, yeah. Fly downtown party. I wish you'd be close. I wish we should be close. I don't want nobody.
Take my love from me, I'll give you everything you want and need.
Baby, will you take my love?
Take my love from me, I'll give you everything you want and need. So deep, so deep. Take my love from me. Unlimited 5 seconds.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Hey, good, folks. Come on, George. Let's get over here. We get over here. Get over here. Yeah, George is right there. Hey, guess what? We're going to be closing it. Now, as you can see, we gave you something to think about. But in all due respect, get out and vote. Get out and vote. It's very, very important. You got your voters pamphlets and you got your ballots and whatever. What do you think, George?
I think so too. I think
What about your community? Can you say something to them for a minute?
necesitamos votar, necesitamos participar en el proceso.
Okay, it's going to be very, very important. What about you guys? You guys going to vote this time around?
Yes.
For sure?
Yes.
From Hawaii, all the way from Hawaii?
All the way.
You going to bring some folks from Hawaii? You going to bring some South Africa?
I'm from Nigeria.
You from Nigeria?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's kind of an interesting aspect of it. See, I understand you're going to be probably doing an event. If they want to know a little bit more about your particular group, you got a website or anything?
Oh yeah. You can find me Easy Baba Melo, IZZY BABAMELO. I'm an Afrobeat artist, originally from Nigeria, but I'm based here in Portland, Oregon.
Sounds good.
I'm here to stay.
Let's put that address. Put that address one more time.
It's IZZY BABAMELO. Easy Baba Melo.
All right.
You can find me everywhere.
How about you, say? What do you do?
Oh.
What do you do?
I'm Lonnie K, and I'm an R&B pop hip hop artist. And I'm originally from Hawaii, but I now reside in Portland and also here to stay.
Oh, really? Oh, awesome. How about that? We're going to have them on the show more often. What do you think, George?
Absolutely.
That'd be a good deal?
Yes.
And what about you, George? You got anything else going?
Nope, not right now. I'm going to be hosting the next show, but I definitely want to make a shout out to all of the community of color that we got to participate, we got to vote. We have to show up. November 8th is the last day. It's going to be our election time. We have to participate.
And George, I want to thank you personally, this last minute, I want to thank you personally for being able to, working with the Christine aspect of it and getting there to the Portland area, getting her on ground and being over there on the island so we can so she can kind of see what the issues that we're having. Okay?
Absolutely.
Appreciate that very much.
No problem.
Make a shout out to you on that, okay? Sounds good?
Sounds good. Thanks,
Okay,
Bruce.
good. Thank you very much, folks. See you next week, or better yet, you'll be seeing George on the show this next time around, okay? Have a good one.
Good job, guys.
So, there you go. Good show. How about that?